Nobody has been asking the right question about the car. Not directly. Not the way the evidence demands. Every major network has covered the masked suspect, the backpack, the ransom notes, the damaged utility box, but the vehicle question, the one sitting at the absolute center of this investigation, has been circling without ever fully landing. Was the same car used to move Nancy Guthrie on the night she disappeared? And if so, does that car connect to the two men whose names have dominated this case since day one? Tommaso Cioni and Dominic Evans. Because here is what most people watching this case do not yet know. As of March 11, 2026, a vehicle directly connected to Tommaso Cioni, the last known person to see Nancy Guthrie alive, is still sitting in law enforcement custody. Not returned. Not cleared. He's still being forensically processed at a mechanic shop under the control of the Pima County Sheriff's Department. 6 weeks into this investigation, and nobody has explained why. That is where this video starts, and that is the thread we are going to follow all the way to the end. On the evening of Saturday, January 31st, 2026, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, mother of Today's Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, had dinner at her daughter Annie's home in Tucson, Arizona. She had taken an Uber there earlier that day. After dinner, her son-in-law Tommaso Cioni drove her home in his vehicle. The drive took approximately 10 minutes. Cioni walked Nancy to her front door, confirmed she was safely inside, and left. That was the last confirmed moment anyone saw her. Now, what happened in the hours that followed is now the subject of one of the most intensive federal investigations in recent American history. At 1:47 a.m. on Sunday, February 1st, Nancy's Nest doorbell camera went offline. At 2:12 a.m., images recovered by the FBI from residual back-end server data show a masked, armed individual in long sleeves, gloves, and a black Ozark Trail backpack at Nancy's front door, removing the camera from its mount, placing plants in front of it to obstruct the view. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker stopped syncing with her iPhone. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed this as the moment investigators believe she was separated from her device. Not a malfunction, a deliberate separation. 8 minutes later, at 2:36 a.m., a vehicle appeared on a Ring camera mounted outside the home of Elias and Danielle Strategoulis, 2.5 miles from Nancy's address on Camino Real, a back road cutting through the Catalina foothills. NBC News drove the route between the two locations and confirmed it takes 6 minutes using roads that bypass every major intersection. Roads that run directly through the same geographic corridor where Tommaso Cioni lives and works. Roads that Cioni himself would know intimately after nearly 20 years in this part of Tucson. Run the numbers. 2:28 a.m., the pacemaker signal goes dark. 6 minutes of travel time. The vehicle appears at 2:36 a.m. A 2-minute gap that investigators have confirmed is consistent with the travel time between the two locations. Not a theory, an official confirmation. And now here is the detail that sharpens all of this into a single focused question. The FBI established a 2-mile search perimeter around Nancy's home in the days following her disappearance. The Strategoulis camera, the one that captured the vehicle, sits at 2.5 miles, half a mile outside the entire canvas. The Strategoulis family came forward voluntarily after watching the news. No investigator had knocked on their door, and the vehicle they captured on that back road at 2:36 in the morning was traveling in the direction of the same road network that connects directly to the home of the last person confirmed to have been with Nancy Guthrie. Tommaso Cioni's vehicle is still in police custody right now. A Ring camera captured a vehicle on the most logical exit route 8 minutes after Nancy's pacemaker went silent. You and Dominic Evans, Cioni's bandmate, whose physical profile the internet matched to the masked suspect within hours of the footage being released, spoke to federal investigators for 40 minutes and has not heard from them since. 3 facts. 1 question. Was it the same car? If you are new here, subscribe now and hit the bell. This channel follows the forensic evidence, not the headlines. And this thread is far from finished. The blue Honda CR-V belonging to Nancy Guthrie and Tommaso Cioni was impounded by the Pima County Sheriff's Department in the first days of February 2026. 6 weeks later, as of March 11th, it has still not been returned. So it is currently sitting at a mechanic shop, still in law enforcement custody, being put back together after what investigative reporter Dave Mack described on Nancy Grace's Crime Stories podcast as an exhaustive search. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed to Parade magazine that the vehicle is still part of the investigation, but gave no timeline for its return. That is not routine. In a kidnapping investigation, vehicles connected to individuals who have been publicly cleared are typically returned once forensic processing is complete. The blue Honda has been in custody for 6 weeks. That timeline suggests either the forensic analysis is extraordinarily complex, or what investigators are looking for inside that vehicle has not yet been fully resolved. A Tommaso Cioni drove Nancy Guthrie home in that car on the night of January 31st. It was the last vehicle she was confirmed to have been inside. If the car that transported her home that night is the same car that appeared on Camino Real 8 minutes after her pacemaker went silent, that single confirmation collapses the central question of this entire investigation. But there is a second vehicle in this picture that has received far less attention. Retired NYPD detective Pat Brosnan examined the ring camera footage captured by Elias and Danielle Strategoulias on Camino Real at 2:36 a.m. on February 1st. His assessment was precise. The vehicle's slanted roofline, the window shape, the rear quarter glass, the vertical brake lights. His conclusion: the car appears to be a Kia Soul, not a blue Honda CR-V, a Kia Soul, a compact crossover. It's common, quiet, forgettable. The kind of car that disappears into any residential street at 2:30 in the morning without a second glance. If Brosnan's identification is accurate, it means there may have been 2 vehicles in play that night. The Honda that drove Nancy home earlier in the evening, and the Kia Soul that moved through Camino Real 8 minutes after her pacemaker disconnected. 2 vehicles, 2 roles. 1 question: are they connected to the same people? The road the Kia Soul was traveling on reinforces the title question directly. Camino Real connects only to East River Road. It does not appear as a primary GPS navigation route between the Catalina foothills and the broader Tucson road network. A driver following standard mapping directions would be routed towards Skyline Drive or Sunrise Drive, both wider, better lit, and equipped with traffic cameras. Camino Real is the kind of road you know because you have driven it before, because you live in this part of Tucson, because you have used it enough times that it has become the instinctive choice when you need to move quietly and quickly, without crossing a single camera-equipped intersection. Tommaso Cioni has lived in this part of Tucson since 2006. His school sits along the northern corridor of the same foothills. He drives these roads every day. Skyline Drive, East River Road, the back roads cutting through the Catalina foothills between Oro Valley and Nancy's Street on North Camino Escalante. These are not unfamiliar routes to him. They are the geography of his daily life. Danielle Strategoulias told Fox News Digital directly. Yet if they even sort of knew the area or actually cased the area beforehand, That road behind Camino Real, called Camino Escuela, would be an even better idea. There's never anybody on it, and never a police car to be seen. That assessment came from someone who lives on that road, someone who understands its invisibility from daily experience. The suspect who chose Camino Real had the same understanding, not from a map, from familiarity. The blue Honda is still in custody. The Kia Soul has been identified on the exit route. Cioni knew these roads. Evans lived inside the same geographic world. 2 vehicles, 2 men, 1 night, and an 8-minute window that the forensic record has not yet fully explained. The FBI drew a 2-mile circle around Nancy Guthrie's home on North Camino Escalante and called it a canvas. See tens of thousands of personnel, satellite imaging, facial recognition infrastructure, cellular analysis teams, the computational power to process 10,000 hours of surveillance footage simultaneously. And the search perimeter stopped at 2 miles. The Stratigrolia's camera sits at 2.5 miles. That half-mile gap is not a minor administrative detail. It is the distance between the most forensically significant piece of visual evidence, in this case entering the investigative record, within 48 hours, and that same evidence surfacing weeks later because a private couple decided to come forward on their own after watching the news. Elias and Daniela Stratigrolias did not receive a knock on their door. No investigator flagged their street-facing Ring camera as sitting on the most logical exit route from the scene. But they came forward voluntarily after recognizing that Camino Real, the road their camera covers, was the road being discussed in news coverage. They contacted Fox News Digital directly. Only then did that footage enter the public record. Only then did the vehicle captured at 2:36 a.m. become evidence that investigators could work with. Think about the forensic cost of that gap in the context of the title question. If the vehicle on Camino Real connects to Tommaso Cioni or Dominic Evans, if that footage is the thread that confirms the car, the route, and the people, then that thread almost did not survive. Ring cameras operate on rolling retention cycles. Footage can be automatically overwritten within 30 to 60 days. If the Stratigrolia's family had not acted when they did, that 2:36 a.m. Their capture could have been permanently erased before any investigator ever requested it. The FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey Team deployed helicopters fitted with Bluetooth scanning equipment to fly low grid patterns over the Catalina foothills, searching for Nancy's pacemaker signal. Those helicopter grids covered areas beyond the 2-mile canvas. The aerial search was wider than the ground search. The technology reached further than the investigators on foot. And the evidence that surfaced publicly, the Camino Real footage, appeared in the gap between them. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed on February 27th, 26 days into the investigation, that investigators were now reviewing vehicles in areas further from Nancy's home. 4 weeks before anyone officially acknowledged the perimeter needed to be wider. What changed? The footage went public. External pressure from the Stratigrolia's story, spreading across social media, forced an expansion that should have happened on day 1. Now, apply that same logic directly to the 2 names at the center of this case. Tommaso Cioni's daily routes run through this exact corridor. His school in Oro Valley sits at the northern end of the same foothills where Nancy lived. The roads between his neighborhood and hers pass directly through the area the search perimeter missed. If the vehicle on Camino Real belongs to someone in Cioni's world, someone familiar with these back roads, someone who understood exactly how far a 2-mile search perimeter would reach, then the half-mile gap between the search radius and the camera was not accidental. It was anticipated. Fox News Digital approached 5 homes with street-facing cameras on Camino Real. None had been contacted by investigators. One neighbor named Aldine Meister told Fox News she had seen an unidentified man walking near a junction leading toward Nancy Street in mid-January, weeks before the disappearance. He didn't have your typical walking gear on and had his hat pulled really far over his eyes. She described him as younger. He just didn't look like he was going out for a walk. She mentioned it to her husband, but did not report it until after the case broke publicly. A separate neighbor reported seeing an unidentified male near what appeared to be an abandoned dark red Honda SUV on February 2nd, the morning after Nancy disappeared, at the intersection of Camino Juan Paisano and Piedra Seca, positioned between Camino Real and Nancy's home. The Honda stayed in place for approximately 3 days before being moved. 2 unidentified males, 2 separate sightings, the same corridor. Weeks of pre-disappearance activity on the roads connecting the search perimeter's edge to Nancy's front door. The search stopped half a mile short, but the evidence did not. The FBI reviewed the Strategalia's footage. 12 vehicles captured between midnight and 6 a.m. on February 1st, 2026. A federal investigation. A forensic timeline that places a vehicle on that exact road during that exact window. And the conclusion that came back through a source connected to the investigation, reported by TMZ on February 27th, was a single phrase: dead end. But the FBI's reasoning was more specific than a dead end. Their position was precise. The area where the cars are driving, as well as the ingress and egress patterns, led the agency to determine the vehicles have no association with the disappearance. Not that the footage was unreadable, not that the plates were obscured, that the movement patterns of those 12 vehicles do not match what investigators already know about how the suspect's car moved that night. Read that carefully. To conclude that ingress and egress patterns rule out 12 vehicles, investigators need a reference point. A picture of the suspect vehicle's movement that is detailed enough to compare against 12 others and say with confidence, none of these match. That kind of conclusion does not come from an empty investigation. It comes from one that already has a working model of the suspect's route. And if investigators have that model, they built it from somewhere in the 10,000 hours of surveillance footage they have been processing since the first week of February. That brings the vehicle question directly back to the Honda CR-V and the Kia Soul. If the FBI's working model of the suspect's route already exists, built from footage retrieved separately from the Strategalia's camera, then the 12 vehicles on that footage were ruled out because they do not match a vehicle investigators have already identified. The Kia Soul that Pat Brosnan identified from the same footage was not among the 12 dismissed. It was the car the footage was captured to find. Now place that against Cioni's blue Honda CR-V still sitting in a mechanic shop 6 weeks later. 2 vehicles, one identified by a retired NYPD detective as matching the suspect's route. One still in forensic custody after an exhaustive search, connected to the last person confirmed to have been with Nancy. On the same night, in the same geographic corridor. The ABC News statement from investigators added another layer. Sources told ABC that investigators have had glimpses of vehicles from various cameras, but have not yet associated a particular vehicle with the disappearance. That sentence is constructed carefully. It does not say there are no vehicle leads. It says no confirmed association has been made yet. The word "yet" is doing significant investigative work in that sentence. The second sighting sharpens this further. On February 2nd, one day after Nancy disappeared, a neighbor reported observing an unidentified male near an abandoned dark red Honda SUV at the intersection of Camino Juan Paisano and Piedra Seca. That intersection sits between Camino Real and Nancy's home on North Camino Escalante. The Honda had visible bumper damage. The man was described as Hispanic, approximately 5 feet 9, close-trimmed beard, silver bracelet, a cigarette in hand. The vehicle stayed in that location for approximately 3 days before being moved. The Pima County Sheriff's Department did not respond to Fox News Digital's multiple requests for comment on that sighting. A vehicle. On the corridor between the crime scene and the Ring camera, 1 day after the event, still in place for 3 days, with no official response from investigators. Whether that dark red Honda connects to the Kia Soul on Camino Real, to the blue Honda CR-V still in forensic custody, or to neither. Its presence on that specific road on that specific day is not background noise. It is geography speaking. And the geography of this case keeps drawing the same circle around the same roads, the same corridor, and the same 2 names. The 12-car dismissal did not close the vehicle question. It narrowed it. And the car that was left standing after 12 were ruled out is the one that matters. The suspect who approached Nancy Guthrie's front door on the night of February 1st, 2026, did not bring a cell phone. That operational conclusion was reached independently by former FBI agent and CIA officer Tracy Walder, digital forensics expert Heather Barnhart, and retired FBI supervisory special agent Jason Pack. And it matters not just as a forensic detail, but as a direct window into how carefully this operation was planned. And who had the knowledge to plan it that way? Every phone is a continuous broadcasting device. It pings cell towers. It registers on Wi-Fi networks. It logs movement in real time without the owner doing anything at all. Carrying a phone into a residential neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning places that device and its registered owner on a map that federal investigators can access with a single subpoena. The suspect understood this completely. The phone was left behind or disabled before the approach began. That decision was made in advance. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed that digital forensic teams are actively reviewing cell tower data to identify anomalous devices, phones that do not belong to neighborhood residents. During the window Nancy was taken, investigators can establish what experts call the pattern of life for a neighborhood. The devices that belong there, the devices that do not, and the devices that were deliberately absent during the exact window of the crime. Now apply that framework directly to Tommaso Cioni and Dominic Evans. Both men live inside the geographic radius of the cell towers covering the Catalina foothills. Both of their phones would normally produce continuous tower data throughout any given night. If either phone went dark between midnight and 4 a.m. on February 1st and reactivated at dawn, that gap already exists in the tower, data the FBI collected in the first week of the investigation. It cannot be deleted retroactively. It cannot be explained away. It sits in a federal database with a timestamp attached to it. And the relevant dates do not begin on February 1st. Law enforcement sources confirmed that January 11th and January 23rd are dates of interest in this investigation. Dates when suspicious activity may have occurred near Nancy's property. A neighbor, Aldine Meister, told Fox News she saw an unidentified man walking near the junction leading toward Nancy's street in mid-January. A second neighbor reported a separate suspicious sighting in the same corridor around the same period. If the phone of anyone connected to this case went dark on those same mid-January dates, in the same midnight to early morning window, that pattern across 3 separate nights is not a coincidence. It is a behavioral signature that repeats itself with the consistency of rehearsal. Digital forensics expert Heather Barnhart raised a layer that extends the digital picture beyond phones entirely. A device does not need to connect to a Wi-Fi network to leave a trace near it. Simply being within range of a router causes the device to register as a detected signal in the router's access log. A Nancy's home router and the routers of neighboring properties may contain records of unrecognized devices that appeared in range on the nights of January 11th, January 23rd, and February 1st. The FBI recovered residual back-end data from Google's servers tied to Nancy's Nest camera. Router logs from the same address would have been equally accessible to the same investigators. The damaged utility box discovered around the corner from Nancy's home adds another dimension. Investigators confirmed it is under active review as a possible connection to the neighborhood internet outage reported on the night she disappeared. Multiple neighbors told News Nation their home security camera footage from that night is either missing or shows a gap marked "not available." A utility disruption that kills neighborhood Wi-Fi at 1:47 a.m. So the exact moment Nancy's Nest camera went offline does not happen independently of everything else happening in that corridor at that hour. Someone understood the digital infrastructure of that neighborhood. Someone knew which signals needed to go dark and how to make them go dark before the approach began. That level of knowledge does not come from a map or a quick online search. It comes from time spent in that environment, from familiarity with that street, those cameras, and the technology running behind them. Tommaso Cioni spent nearly 20 years living and working in that corridor. The digital blackout was designed to erase a trail, but it may have created one instead. After the FBI released its images from Nancy Guthrie's doorbell camera, most people focused on what was obvious in the frame: the mask, the gloves, the black Ozark trail backpack, the firearm in the holster. The deliberate, unhurried movement of someone who had rehearsed this enough times that urgency had been replaced by procedure. But one detail protruding from the suspect's front right jacket pocket went largely unexamined until former FBI agent and CIA officer Tracy Walder studied the footage frame by frame on the Brian Enton Investigates podcast on February 28th. An antenna, visible in the footage when reviewed carefully. An object Walder could not confirm definitively, but assessed with the precision of someone who has spent a career reading operational details in field surveillance. And she leaned toward one explanation above the other. A walkie-talkie? Her reasoning was direct. A walkie-talkie makes sense in the fact that a getaway vehicle is going to be critical in this case if there is someone else that helped. That would be a way, obviously you would not want to use a cell phone, to communicate with someone in short range to bring a car to a certain location. Read that assessment alongside what the forensic timeline already shows. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker disconnects. 8 minutes later, a vehicle appears on Camino Real traveling away from the neighborhood. The timeline between those two events is consistent with a driver who was staged nearby, waiting, and received a signal to move. Not driving past randomly, waiting. And the only communication method that achieves that coordination without leaving a single traceable record in the tower, data the FBI has been processing since day one, is a walkie-talkie operating on a radio frequency that geofencing technology cannot detect. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer was more direct than Walder on this point. She posted publicly. Porch Guy definitely had an accomplice, and maybe more than one. No way you commit this without at least one other person. See the antenna? See the handheld walkie-talkie? They were coordinated. She went further. At least two people are involved. That assessment eliminates the possibility of a lone actor entirely. Now, connect that two-person framework directly to the title question. Tommaso Cioni drove Nancy home at approximately 9:45 p.m. on January 31st, and he knew the layout of her property. He knew her routines. He knew her camera system. He knew the roads between her home and the broader neighborhood. Dominic Evans, his bandmate of nearly 20 years in the Tucson-based rock band Early Black, had a physical profile that the internet matched to the doorbell footage within hours of it being released. Two people, both with some degree of access to the world Nancy Guthrie lived in. Both connected to each other through years of shared geography and a band formed together in 2007. The walkie-talkie theory does not require both of them to have been on that porch. It requires one person at the door and one person behind a wheel. Coordinated, dressed similarly, operating on a frequency that leaves no digital trace. Former FBI agent Coffindaffer raised that possibility explicitly. And don't be too sure that the guy with no gun and no backpack wasn't an accomplice. So many cases where individuals involved in coordinated operations choose to dress alike. Retired police detective and Colorado Attorney General's Office executive Lisa Miller reinforced the walkie-talkie conclusion from a different angle. The doorbell footage does not appear glitchy at all, she told Fox News Digital. Even police car laptops have glitched during traffic stops involving a signal jammer. The video quality rules out a Wi-Fi jammer being used during the approach, which puts the antenna back in the walkie-talkie category. A device designed for one purpose: coordinating a second person at a distance, getting a car to a specific location at a specific time. At 2:36 a.m., a vehicle was on Camino Real, 8 minutes after the pacemaker went silent. And the math already tells us someone was waiting. The antenna tells us someone was listening. On the night of January 31st, 2026, Tommaso Cioni drove his mother-in-law, Nancy Guthrie, home from a family dinner at his house. The drive took approximately 10 minutes. He walked her to her front door. He confirmed she was safely inside. He drove away. And hours later, Nancy was gone. That sequence of events placed Cioni's name at the absolute center of this investigation from the moment it became public. Not because of anything investigators said, because of the simple forensic logic that in any investigation, the last confirmed contact is the first person examined. Cioni was that person. And when former News Nation host Ashley Banfield claimed on February 4th that a highly regarded law enforcement source had told her Cioni may be the prime suspect in the case, the public scrutiny that followed was immediate and overwhelming. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos shot it down from the beginning. At this point, investigators have not identified a suspect or person of interest in this case. But the scrutiny continued. The questions piled up, and investigators did what the evidence required them to do. They searched Cioni and Annie's home, a multi-hour operation that included luminol testing, the chemical compound used to detect biological traces not visible to the naked eye. Their blue Honda CR-V was impounded. Cioni was interviewed, and then, on February 16th, Sheriff Nanos issued a formal statement. On the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious, and are victims in this case, cleared, officially, publicly. And yet the Honda CR-V connected to Cioni and Annie remains in law enforcement custody as of March 11th. Still at a mechanic shop, still being put back together after what investigative journalist Dave Mack described as an exhaustive search. The Pima County Sheriff's Department confirmed the vehicle has not yet been returned and gave no timeline for when it would be. That tension between a public clearance and a vehicle still in forensic custody is not a contradiction, investigators have explained. Cleared as a suspect does not necessarily mean cleared of all evidentiary relevance. And the Honda was the last vehicle Nancy Guthrie was confirmed to have been inside. It is the vehicle that transported her from the last safe environment she was in to the front door of the home she never left. If that car contains trace evidence that connects it to the events of February 1st, biological material, fiber evidence, anything, then its continued presence in custody means the forensic analysis is not yet complete. Nanos addressed the ongoing public speculation about Cioni in a separate interview with the Daily Mail. I understand the pundits are out there. They're gonna say, well, he's the last one to see her alive. We understand that stuff, but my goodness, you're putting a mark on somebody who could be completely innocent. And more important than that, he's family. That statement is designed to protect someone from targeted public pressure. But it also contains a detail that the rest of his public comments do not contradict. He is the last one to see her alive. The sheriff did not say that is false. He said it is not sufficient reason to mark someone. And he is right. Last contact is not evidence of guilt. It is the starting point of an investigation, not the conclusion. On March 1st, Savannah Guthrie returned to the Today Show for the first time since her mother disappeared. She was joined at the memorial outside Nancy's home by her sister Annie and Tommaso Cioni. The three were photographed hugging at the growing tribute near Nancy's mailbox. A family united publicly by grief. A vehicle still in a mechanic shop. And a case with no named suspect. The car is still in custody, and the investigation is still active, and no one has yet explained why an exhaustive forensic search of a cleared man's vehicle has not yet been completed 6 weeks later. Within hours of the FBI releasing doorbell camera footage on February 10, 2026, the internet had produced a name. Not from investigators, not from law enforcement, from online sleuths who studied the suspect's height, build, facial hair, and movement patterns and pointed to one specific individual, Dominic Evans, 48 years old, 5th grade elementary school teacher, father of 3 sons, drummer in a Tucson-based rock band called Early Black, and the bandmate of Tommaso Cioni, Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law, for nearly 2 decades. What followed was not an investigation. It was a flood. People gathered outside Evans's home in the Tucson suburb of Marana. Evans and his wife Andrea spent the night with the lights off, watching through windows as people accumulated on their street. Their teenage son was told not to come home. Andrea Evans later told the New York Times she was scared numb. It was all night looking through the window, trying not to let any light out. Evans spoke to the Times directly. He said he felt like someone had taken his name. When pressed on why he thought it happened, he was measured. Monetary, clickbait, to be relevant, entertainment. But there are innocent people that get hurt. He confirmed he was at home with his family on the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared. He confirmed he had spoken with investigators from the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department for approximately 40 minutes, asked about his relationship with Cioni, the band, and his whereabouts on the night of January 31st into February 1st. He had not heard from investigators since. Sheriff Chris Nanos addressed Evans directly in a public interview. He's going through hell, and it is horrible. He urged Evans to pursue legal action against those spreading unverified accusations. That public statement of sympathy from the sheriff is significant. It is not the language used for someone actively under investigation. It is the language used for someone who has been caught in the crossfire of a high-profile case and whose suffering investigators acknowledge as unjust. The connection between Evans and the Guthrie family is 1 degree removed and specific. Evans met Nancy Guthrie once, in 2011. At an Easter egg hunt she hosted at her home. He learned about her disappearance from Instagram. His link to this case runs entirely through his 19-year friendship and musical partnership with Tommaso Cioni, a man who has himself been publicly cleared. But the investigative record does contain one detail about Evans that sits outside the realm of online speculation. Investigators questioned him specifically about his whereabouts on the night of January 31st into February 1st. They asked about his relationship with Cioni. They asked about the band. Those are targeted questions, not the questions you ask someone with zero relevance to a case. They are the questions you ask to establish a verifiable timeline and confirm or rule out a connection. Evans provided that timeline. He was at home with his family. Investigators interviewed him once for 40 minutes and have not returned. Whether that means he has been quietly cleared through corroborating evidence, phone records, family confirmation, digital data, or whether the investigation has simply moved to other threads without closing the Evans question publicly, has not been stated. What exists is this: a physical resemblance that trained online eyes and some investigators initially noticed, a confirmed interview with federal and county investigators, a public statement of sympathy from the sheriff, and a case that as of March 13, 2026, still has no named suspect. Dominic Evans says he is not involved. Law enforcement has not said otherwise, and the real suspect, masked, armed, and still unidentified, remains at large. Of everything the suspect carried to Nancy Guthrie's front door on the night of February 1st, one item has proven to be the most forensically significant piece of physical evidence in this entire investigation. Not the firearm in the holster, not the gloves, the backpack, a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. And according to Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, it is the single item of equipment investigators have been able to definitively identify from the footage. Nanos confirmed it precisely in a statement to the Associated Press. This backpack is exclusive to Walmart, and we are working with Walmart management to develop further leads. CBS News had already confirmed the exclusivity. The Ozark Trail hiker pack is not manufactured for third-party retailers. It is designed, distributed, and sold only through Walmart's retail infrastructure. That fact transforms it from a generic piece of equipment into one of the most traceable physical items in this case. Every Walmart operates a surveillance system most people underestimate. Overhead cameras cover every aisle continuously. Register cameras record transactions from multiple angles. Self-checkout stations have face-level cameras that capture clear images of every customer. Exterior parking lot cameras record every vehicle that enters and exits. And every transaction, cash or card, is time-stamped and logged in a system that correlates directly to the camera footage recorded at that exact register at that exact moment. Walmart responded quickly. The company provided investigators with records of all Ozark Trail hiker pack purchases made across recent months, both in-store and online. NBC correspondent Tom Winter confirmed that investigators could subpoena Walmart for recent local Tucson area purchases. Sheriff Nanos called the backpack one of the most promising leads in the case. The Walmart trail appeared to be a clean, direct, traceable thread, the kind of lead that collapses a case rapidly when followed. Then, the lead widened in a direction investigators had not anticipated publicly. Nanos told reporters that while the backpack is a Walmart exclusive, the investigation had to consider that it may not have been purchased directly from Walmart at all. His exact words were careful. That backpack is new and exclusive to Walmart. But who's to say I didn't buy it and put it on eBay? That is what we are looking at. The simple Walmart transaction trail suddenly extended into the secondary resale market. eBay, Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, platforms where transactions are harder to trace and faces are rarely captured on camera. Now connect the backpack directly to the title question. If the Ozark Trail was purchased in the Tucson area by someone connected to this case, someone who had prior knowledge of Nancy's property, her routines, her camera system. That purchase is not an isolated transaction. It is part of a sequence of preparation. The vehicle, the route, the digital blackout, the walkie-talkie, and now a backpack selected specifically, packed deliberately, carried to the door of an 84-year-old woman who had no idea someone had been building toward this moment for weeks. Former FBI agent Maureen O'Connell assessed the reward structure of the case on Nancy Grace's crime stories and offered a statement that reframes the entire investigation. If there is more than one person involved in this, which I believe there is, they are now in an air fryer. $1 million is a lot of money. That is going to change someone's world. This person is thinking about it, and the other person involved knows they are thinking about it. $1 million offered by the Guthrie family. $100,000 from the FBI. See, a coordinated two-person operation where each participant now knows the other is sitting with that number in their head. The backpack is a forensic thread. The reward is a psychological one. And in cases built on coordination between multiple individuals, it is often the psychological thread that breaks first. The Ozark Trail has not gone cold. It has simply widened. And somewhere between a Walmart receipt and a resale platform transaction, the answer to who packed that bag and why is waiting to be found. When FBI Director Kash Patel posted the doorbell camera images on February 10, 2026, most people looked at the masked figure and saw one person on one night. But law enforcement sources immediately recognized something the public had not yet been told. Two of those images were not from the same day. A BC News reported it first. The image showing the masked suspect without a backpack or gun holster was captured by Nancy's Nest doorbell camera on a day prior to February 1st, not the morning she disappeared. Sources told ABC the images showing the suspect fully equipped, backpack on, holster visible, were from the morning of February 1st itself. Two separate appearances. Two separate dates. One person who had been to that porch before and came back. CNN confirmed it independently. NBC confirmed it. CBS confirmed it. The reporting was specific and sourced across 4 competing newsrooms. CNN Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller stated directly that multiple trips to Nancy's front door fit with the investigative assumption that the operation was planned in advance and likely involved pre-operational surveillance and reconnaissance. And the theory that quickly crystallized among investigators and analysts was precise. The suspect approached Nancy's door on an earlier visit, noticed the camera, and was deterred. Not permanently. Recalibrated. They returned on February 1st, this time equipped to neutralize the camera. A gloved hand over the lens. Branches pulled from the yard placed in front of it. The first visit was reconnaissance. The second was execution. Former FBI agent Jason Pack told ABC News directly, if it is the same person, it could indicate that the person was there surveilling the place before the event happened. The fact that there was preparation and planning makes it more of a sophisticated type of criminal activity than someone just showing up. Now connect that directly to the title question. Who had the knowledge and the access to conduct pre-operational surveillance on Nancy Guthrie's home in the Catalina foothills without triggering suspicion? Who could walk up to her front door on a residential street in the middle of the day or the middle of the night and not stand out to neighbors? Someone whose presence in that neighborhood had a plausible explanation. Someone whose connection to that address was already established. The FBI has asked neighbors to check their security systems for suspicious people and vehicles going back to January 1st, a full month before the disappearance. A month of potential surveillance, a month of visits that may have included Camino Real, the back road that runs behind the neighborhood and connects to the same road network Cioni drives daily. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos responded to the 4-network confirmation on February 24th. He stated, "There is no date or timestamp associated with these images, and any suggestion the photographs were taken on different days is purely speculative." 4 major networks had confirmed it through independent law enforcement sources. The sheriff called it speculation. That contradiction is not confusion, it is control. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer was explicit. "No way you commit this without accomplices." She raised a second operational dimension. The image without a backpack may not be the same suspect on a different day at all. It may be a second individual. So many cases where people involved in coordinated operations choose to dress alike. An accomplice on a reconnaissance run is dressed identically to the operative who returns on February 1st to complete the operation. One person who knows the property from years of family connection. One person whose physical profile matched what the internet found within hours of the footage being released. 2 people, 2 roles, 1 address they both had reason to know. The DNA recovered from inside Nancy's home contains genetic material from at least 2 individuals that does not match Nancy or anyone in her immediate circle. Mixed, complex. 2 contributors. The investigation has not yet returned a match, but the sample exists. It is being processed. And when genetic genealogy unlocks what CODIS could not, the architect of this operation will have left something behind they cannot take back. 4 networks, 4 independent law enforcement sources. 1 confirmed conclusion. The suspect visited Nancy Guthrie's porch before February 1st. A BC reported it first. CNN confirmed it through a separate source. NBC confirmed it. CBS confirmed it. The reporting was not vague, it was specific. The image without the backpack was from a prior visit. The suspect came back. The operation was rehearsed. Then Sheriff Chris Nanos stood in front of cameras on February 24th and called it purely speculative. That contradiction sits at the center of something larger than a disagreement over timestamps, because the fracture between what 4 networks confirmed and what the sheriff denied publicly is not the only fault line running through this investigation. There is a second fracture, a deeper one, and it runs directly between the 2 agencies meant to be working this case together. Reports surfaced in February that friction had developed between FBI agents and the Pima County Sheriff's Department. The specific allegation, reported by multiple outlets and not denied by either agency, was that the Sheriff's Department had purportedly denied the FBI access to evidence collected from the scene. If that allegation is accurate, it means the 2 agencies running the most high-profile kidnapping investigation in recent American history were, at some point, not sharing the same evidence table. Sheriff Nanos took additional heat for attending an Arizona Wildcats NCAA basketball game, while Nancy's family were filming a direct video response to her suspected captors, urging them to make contact. He has been accused of making conflicting public statements at different points in the investigation. And a report published by the Arizona Republic revealed discrepancies in his publicly posted resume, alleging he resigned from the El Paso Police Department in 1982 to avoid being fired after a pattern of disciplinary issues, including excessive force and insubordination. The Sheriff's Department confirmed 2 clerical errors in the resume, but did not address the substance of the allegations. The United Cajun Navy, a volunteer search organization that specializes in missing persons and disaster response, formally offered a full operation package to Nanos and received no response. EquiSearch, another established volunteer search group, was similarly turned away. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer posted publicly, wondering why Sheriff Nanos keeps turning away proven, capable civilian search experts. Is law enforcement close to an arrest, and they know what happened to Nancy, so they don't want to waste the resources of these groups? That question reframes the sheriff's decisions in a different light. If investigators are turning away search volunteers, not because of disorganization, but because they already know the geographic focus of the investigation and do not want civilian activity disrupting an active operational area, that is not mismanagement. That is case control. The same logic that explains the 4-network denial. The same logic that explains why the Honda CR-V connected to Tommaso Cioni is still in a mechanic shop 6 weeks later without explanation. Tell the public less than you know. Let the suspects believe the investigation is wider and less focused than it actually is. And build the case in the silence between what is confirmed and what is denied. The FBI formed a dedicated task force in March 2026. 5 Pima County Sheriff's Department officers and several FBI agents working the Guthrie case full-time. Tips to the FBI tip line have tapered from their early peak. CNN senior law enforcement analyst Josh Campbell noted directly that fewer tips could actually benefit the investigation at this stage. Bogging down investigators with false leads slows the effort to sort fact from fiction. A narrower tip volume means investigators are working verified leads, not chasing noise. The case is not stalled. The fractures between agencies, between public statements and sourced reporting, between cleared suspects and vehicles still in custody. Those fractures are not signs of failure. They are the shape of an investigation that knows more than it is saying. And in the space between the 4-network confirmation and the sheriff's denial, between the family clearance and the Honda still in the shop, the answer to the title question is already being assembled. Was it the same car? Were Cioni and Evans involved? The investigation believes it already knows. The public is waiting for the day it says so. 40 days. No arrest. No named suspect. No confirmed location for Nancy Guthrie. And yet, the forensic architecture of this case, built piece by piece across every thread we have followed, does not point toward an unsolvable investigation. It points toward a solved one that has not yet announced itself. Start with what the evidence has confirmed. A vehicle appeared on Camino Real at 2:36 a.m., 8 minutes after Nancy's pacemaker disconnected, on the most logical exit route from the scene, identified by a retired NYPD detective as consistent with a Kia Soul. The blue Honda CR-V connected to Tommaso Cioni, the last confirmed person to see Nancy alive, remains in law enforcement custody after an exhaustive forensic search, 6 weeks in, with no timeline for return. The DNA recovered from inside Nancy's home contains genetic material from at least 2 unidentified individuals. Mixed, complex, being processed through forensic genetic genealogy after returning no match in CODIS. The suspect visited Nancy's porch on at least 2 separate occasions. 4 major networks confirmed it. The operation was planned across multiple visits, multiple weeks, multiple decisions. Someone selected the vehicle, the route, the backpack, the communication device, and the timing. Someone else may have stood on that porch first, dressed identically, to test the environment and report back. The FBI confirmed the prior visit. The sheriff denied it publicly. That contradiction is almost certainly strategic. The reward now stands at over $1,200,000. The Guthrie family offering $1 million. The FBI offering $100,000. Tucson Crime Stoppers adding a further $102,500. Former FBI agent Maureen O'Connell assessed the psychological pressure that number creates with precision. If there is more than one person involved, which I believe there is, they are now in an air fryer. $1 million is a lot of money. That is going to change someone's world. This person is thinking about it, and the other person involved knows they are thinking about it. In a coordinated two-person operation, the reward does something the forensic evidence alone cannot. It introduces doubt between the participants. It creates a calculation each person runs independently, and it only takes one of them to decide the math works in their favor for the entire operation to unravel from the inside. The dedicated task force formed in March, 5 sheriff's officers and multiple FBI agents working this case full-time, is not a sign of a widening investigation. It is a sign of a narrowing one. When resources consolidate around a case rather than expand outward, it means the investigative field has been reduced to a manageable set of verified leads being worked systematically toward a specific outcome. Now bring all of this back to the title question that has driven every chapter of this investigation. Was the same car used on the night Nancy Guthrie was taken? The 8-minute window, the confirmed route, the vehicle identified on Camino Real, and the Honda still sitting in a mechanic shop under law enforcement control suggest the vehicle question is not open. It is answered, just not publicly. Was Tommaso Cioni involved? He was publicly cleared. His car is still in custody. He was the last confirmed person with Nancy. The roads between his daily life and her front door are the roads this investigation keeps returning to. Cleared does not mean resolved. It means the public portion of his examination is complete. Was Dominic Evans involved? He was interviewed for 40 minutes by federal and county investigators and has not heard from them since. The internet's identification of him was powerful enough to send a family into darkness with their lights off. But investigators have not named him, and the case has not closed around his name. Nancy Guthrie has not been found. She requires daily medication. She is 84 years old. The family has never stopped. Savannah Guthrie returned to the Today Show on March 1st and has not stopped publicly pressing for her mother's return. If you have any information about this case, anything at all, call 1-800, call FBI, or visit tips.fbi.gov. A tip that feels small to you may be the thread that closes this. Unsubscribe to this channel if you are not already here. We will cover every development in this case as it happens. Drop your theory in the comments. Where are you watching from tonight? Because the world is watching Nancy Guthrie's case, and that pressure is real. That attention matters, and it has moved investigations before. The case will break. When it does, we will be here.